Welcome to Strictly Marketing Talk Radio, the showcase for high-quality guests who provide high-quality marketing information. Here's your host, Carrie Heaps.
Good morning and welcome to Strictly Marketing Talk Radio. We are so excited that you have tuned in today. We have got a great show lined up for you today. Our special guest is Dave Giannetto, the author of Big Social Mobile. He's also a contributing columnist with our magazine, Strictly Marketing Magazine. So we're going to be bringing Dave on in just a moment. We've got a few quick announcements for everyone. We're very excited to be part of the TalkZone platform, and we have on our show page, if you go down to the bottom of the page, you can click on one of our links, go directly to our magazine website at strictlymarketingmagazine.com. And we've uploaded a couple of new blog posts that you might want to check out, some really great information on video marketing and also on networking. And we typically do a new blog post, a guest blog post once a week. So definitely check that out. And you can subscribe to our email newsletter. We send out typically once a month, and you can definitely take a look and see all the different guest posts that we have. And there's an opportunity to subscribe to the magazine as well. For people who do subscribe, we are offering a free download called the Top 5 Tips to Gain More Media Coverage. And that is an audio download. It's 5 different tracks that you can listen to at any time. And that is a free gift that we give you for subscribing to the magazine. And today's guest is Dave Giannetto, and we're going to be talking today about social media marketing, mobile marketing, and also talking about Dave's book, Big Social Mobile. For those of you who are not familiar with Dave or with his column, he just started with us this year. Dave he helps organizations leverage technology, providing both the technical and business insight that's necessary to create, understand, and utilize to improve performance. He is the author of the book, Big Social Mobile, and that is a wonderful book. I highly recommend you pick that up. We just did a review on that for Amazon. It's a great book. It's how digital initiatives can reshape the enterprise and create business value. The first enterprise-level methodology that helps organizations integrate social media, mobile technology, and big data into their core people, processes, technology, information, and strategy just to create tangible improvements in revenue and profit. And it sounds like it's really a lot to digest, but one of the things that I think Dave is wonderful about is just really breaking things down, taking apart the myths, and kind of making everything about this what's complicated, uncomplicated. So definitely recommend the book. This work, it actually builds upon his first book, which is the award-winning management methodology, the Performance Power Grid, the proven method to create and sustain superior organization performance that defined how organizations use internal information to improve performance. So I want to go ahead and welcome to the show Dave Giannetto. Dave, how are you today?
Hi, Carrie. Good morning. I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful, and I am so excited about this show today because I know you're going to be sharing some really great content with everyone and really being able to give everybody a little bit more detail about your book, what's involved, and kind of some of the things that you can help business owners with. So if you wouldn't mind, Dave, I know that I gave just kind of a brief introduction of, what you specialize in and about the book and your previous book, but would you mind just kind of telling our listening audience a little bit more about you and kind of how you got started in business?
Sure. Well, I think that there's 2 different pieces of it. One is the broader question of how I got started in business. And I came out of college. I was an officer in the Army for 4 years, and then I went into Airborne Express, which competes with UPS, FedEx, was purchased by DHL. And I was an operations logistics manager, and I was a young supervisor trying to move up the ranks. I was pretty aggressive about that at the time. And I was trying to figure out any way I could to really get an advantage over my peer group and get that promotion. It was a pretty competitive environment and a very challenging environment with the union at the time. And I was pretty technology savvy. I taught myself how to program in middle school. So we had this one report. And there, I could see this report. Nobody really understood what some of the information on it said, but I could see a pattern in the data And so I set about trying to figure it out, and lo and behold, what it told me was what some of the drivers are doing on the road, and they shouldn't be doing that. So that information allowed me to really understand what they were doing on the road without them figuring out how I knew it, and I was able to improve the efficiency of the operation quite a bit by using this information, and nobody could figure out where I got it. So I think that's where my kind of infatuation with information and data came from. And eventually I left there and went to a firm called J.H. Cohn. It's modeled after the Big Four. It's a super regional accounting consulting firm. And there we closed an engagement with the United Nations, and I was signed as the lead consultant, and the partner in charge was Tony Zecca, who I wrote my first book with. And we went in there and we started working with the UN on how to put business intelligence technology on top of their very antiquated mainframe. And I really didn't have any guidance. I didn't know what I was doing. Actually, I had no training in this. So I just set about doing what I thought was right. And I would sit with managers and I would say, what information do you really need to manage? You know, what's actually going to drive your performance? They would tell me. And then I would go back to the data. I'd figure out how to get that. I'd put some performance metrics on it, and I would give them this report, and they would use it each day to manage, and they started getting better and better and better. And then I ran a couple other initiatives with large companies, and eventually I started working with Fujifilm, and they won the Business Finance Vision Award. And that's when I really learned that what I was doing was unusual. You know, I wasn't using this technology and information the way everyone else was. So the way I was doing it became the methodology that was in the Performance Power Grid, my first book. And it kind of took off from there, and I took a break to write a novel halfway through with Pelican. And this was the book that I think folks are waiting for once big data, social media, mobile technology hit. You know, Paul Grave called me, asked me if I was interested, and when they call you, you don't say no. They're a fabulous publisher, and I'm really honored to be working with them. So the first book was focused about information internally, and this book really looks at broader information, which pushes us back to social and mobile and how you're interacting and understanding consumers, and then how you can use that relationships in a lot of different ways. So I don't come from a traditional background with this stuff, so maybe that's why my perspective is somewhat different.
And it's so interesting that you bring up one of the things, all the different components. There's so much information out there, you know, within a company. There's so many people running reports, having meetings, and all of this data is being collected. And, you know, as you said, sometimes people don't know how to access it. They're not using it or don't even know that it's there. Is that one of the things that factored into why you wrote this book, Big Social Mobile?
Yeah, I think it's you know, it's the same theme as the first book. You know, what is the right information to drive performance and to create a real result, a tangible result in performance, whether that's operational, financial performance. You know, they're very linked anyway. And then once big data came about, and, you know, big data is a combination of social, mobile. There's about 5 different types of data contained within it. People had even more questions. They knew it was important. Companies were spending a lot of money, but it had sort of devolved into more data just for data's sake. You know, social was more friends and followers just for the sake of having a bigger community, and mobile was just measured on downloads. These were all expert metrics that didn't tie back to the business. And I was saying, you know, look, it's not really about that. Those are necessary things. You must collect data, have a community. You've got to have your mobile app out there. But they're really only vehicles that allow you to do things that have been around for a long time in business, which is get more customers, get more revenue, get more profit. So I think my message resonated a little bit more strongly with executives because I was talking about things in terms they understood, whereas my social counterparts, for example, were talking about building communities, sentiment and engagement, things like that didn't really mean so much to executives. And big data just made it more confusing. And when I talk about it, I talk about very specific things of how a company can use big data to generate what I call tangible results. And then that pushes back to your question, which is, you know, that tells you which data is right. And then how do you enhance that data, tie it over to what we call traditional data, which seems ironic, but enterprise data. And it answers this big question of only get the right data. What is the right data? And that's the real confusion. They can get more data, but they don't know what's the right data, and they don't actually know how to use it once they have it.
Absolutely. And definitely, figuring out what is the right information versus, information that really isn't going to help or seems like it's going to help. Seems like that's a big issue in a lot of companies.
Yeah, it's big data. It tells you a tremendous amount about people and where they're at, what they're interacting with. But, that sounds really cool, and it's inherently valuable. Of course, you want to understand your community and how you can interact with them better, but that's kind of where it ends. So I try to use really simple examples of how you can actually use it in a very, very real way. So one of the examples, I try to always change them to stay relevant, but earlier this year I moved from anyone who's in New Jersey will know Basking Ridge, Bernardsville. It's a popular area up near New York City, and I moved into a more rural area of New Jersey. And I'm a pretty good target customer. I travel a lot, so I have a long-term relationship with certain brands like United and Hertz, and I'm pretty loyal because it makes my life easier just to be loyal. I'm not very price conscious, and a lot of times, in truth, it's not my own money I'm spending. So loyalty has a value to me, and if you were looking at my demographics, you'd be able to tell that in the data stream that I leave. But I moved to this rural area, and there's no Hertz near me. There's an Enterprise fairly close. So the first time I had to travel up to Boston, I called Enterprise and I said, what are your rates, this and that, and I compared that, and they just, of course, gave me the rates like anyone else. But what's interesting is that Enterprise is a car company. They didn't realize what a golden opportunity that was to steal a really high value customer away from a competitor. And there's really no other moment in time that they could have stolen me. Perhaps they could have enticed me with one or two coupons here or there, but I really wouldn't have changed long terms. The long-term benefit of loyalty is just too much higher. But they didn't understand who I was, and more importantly, they didn't understand that moment in time. So they're not doing anything to understand the value of a particular individual, me in this case, and then they're not relating their business model to this opportunity. When somebody moves, it actually creates an opportunity for that car company to capture a new client. So the data combination becomes very simple when you look at it that way. You can advertise and understand who's moving, right? Big data will tell you exactly that. And then you could figure out who is actually a valuable customer to go after. If they had known that, if the agent on the phone had my profile information come up, it would have been in their best interest to offer me a discount, or put me into the loyalty program at a slightly higher level to compete with Hertz. And right away, they would have had themselves a new high-value client, but they're not looking at it in those terms, and they don't have that information integrated through the organization. It's not an uncommon technique. What we found with camera companies, for example, with companies that's selling high-end cameras, who, of course, are having a tough time competing with smartphones and the advances there, they can switch somebody over from a smartphone to a professional camera right around the time they go on vacation. Right? So there are these moments of opportunity when somebody's propensity to buy is much higher than it would be at any other time. So you've got to understand who they are and when that moment occurs so you can take advantage of it almost in real time. And that's a very practical use of big data. And it's not even that complicated once you have kind of the basic building blocks in place.
And that's so interesting. You look at all the different components, and you see missed opportunities all the time. And just while you were sharing that story, it reminded me of, with the magazine when we started, we had a printer that, we were using, and we wound up for our next issue, and who we use now is a completely different company that's even further away from us geographically. They're actually based out of Montana. But they really saw an opportunity because I was not happy about, the way that the whole process went with our initial printer. And we were looking at doing some other things, and they really took care of me. They did a fabulous job, and I would, and of course they under-promised and over-delivered the entire time. And, they even mentioned to me that those were some of the things that they would do, when they're picking up on, I guess conversations on social media and just some different things that I was talking about without even realizing it, that they were picking up on, and use that to their advantage. And of course, I've been with them ever since, and they do a great job. But yeah, it's amazing how much, information is out there that is ignored. It seems to be ignored.
Yeah, that's a good example. And when I'm talking to companies, especially executives, especially folks outside of marketing, and I think this is a mistake a lot of marketers make, is I'm always talking to the audience, the business audience, in the terms and language they understand. So I'm not talking to them about sentiment engagement. I'm talking to them, in more traditional terms. So the things that I'm talking about have always been done by companies, but now we're able to do them with much greater detail, much quicker. We're able to assess somebody, understand where they're at in the buying cycle, understand what individual values drive their propensity to buy, and even sometimes their emotional state at a very specific moment. So we're able to take all these and do this one after another, over and over and over. So building a relationship with you and your magazine, it's not a simple sell, right? It's a fairly complicated thing. So the cycle time tends to be a little bit longer. But how do you do that in a retail environment? How do you do that in Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, where you have to do it one after another, millions and millions of times a day? And that's where the infrastructure becomes important. Mm-hmm. And it's really a different way of thinking. And as you know, the column this month that comes out in the next edition that I do for you is about this basic premise of don't build your processes anymore around the averages. Don't try to, in the enterprise example, don't build a coupon program that tries to entice the average person to rent their car from you on the next vacation that they take. That's old thinking. The new thinking is understand who your best, most valuable customer is. In this case, I probably would have been one of their most valuable customers over the course of my relationship with them. Understand what that perfect customer is, and when you touch them, and when you touch them, how you can convert them, right? So don't think of the averages. Don't live by, I'm going to create a marketing program that appeals to the average person or the widest audience. Think about that one perfect customer, and then how do you convert that perfect consumer, how do you convert that perfect consumer to a customer? And then either go get more customers exactly like them, because they are your highest value customers. They convert more easily, have a higher customer lifetime value, or take all of your customers that are your consumer relationships that are close to that perfect customer and use that same pattern to convert them to customers, because it gets you a higher value over the course of time. It's a different way of thinking. Find that one perfect customer and build your whole company around it, as opposed to let me create a message with broad appeal. It's a whole new way of thinking about it. But it's the more appropriate lens through which to look at things today.
Absolutely. And we are talking with Dave Giannetto, author of Big Social Mobile. If you have a question for Dave, if you'd like to call into the show, the number is 1-888-GO-FOR-IT, 1-888-GO-FOR-IT. And Dave, you did touch on something before. You were talking about one of the common mistakes that you see some marketers make. What are some other common mistakes that you see them make today, and how and can they be fixed?
Yeah, I think, of course, everything can be fixed. The last maybe 18 months have seen a big change for marketers, not just more technology, more data, but chief marketing officers have really become the focus of business, the person with an answer. Before that, it was the CIO, and before that, it was the head of operations, and customer service had their day. But right now, it's the marketer, and that's great, for your organization to be looking at you as as the person who's going to save the day and take them to the next level. But in some ways, they've really turned marketing into sales, and taken away the branding part of marketing and transitioned that over to sales. And a lot of marketers have seized the reins and tried to drive their business ahead. And doing so, they took a really like a frontline leadership stance to do that. And they kind of lost the support mentality that has historically been with marketing. And it's important to remember that marketers are not the best salespeople. They're not the best customer service people. They are not the best operations people. So you can't be all things to all people. And I feel pretty secure saying that, what we're going to see is that this was a big mistake. Marketing cannot be the centerpiece of the organization. It can be the driving factor of telling people who we are in the market. But you can't make all functions consolidate down into marketing. You can't have social customer service as a digital marketing support initiative. It's just we're doing the wrong thing. So the proper mentality is, I say, think of yourself as a conduit. And I know that's hard to do because you're giving up some authority, but it's a more successful place for a marketer to be over the course of the long term. What social consumers, which is a term I use a lot. A social consumer is anyone who uses what I call third-party information in the decision-making process when purchasing a company's product or service. So they're using information outside of what the company gives them to influence their thought process about a certain company or product service. So a social consumer, in order to build a deep relationship, which is exactly what they want with a company, and then they'll be very loyal, what they want is deeper information than couponing, discounting, cheeky messages, cat videos. They don't want that stuff. What they want to understand is, how can this company, product, service really make my life better, easier, cheaper, something of substance that they really can't find from anyone else who isn't an expert in this thing that the company provides. And marketers don't know that. They can't answer that question unless somebody gives them that information. So they try to, but inevitably what they do is they deliver marketing or sales-oriented responses to those real meaningful questions. And these questions could come via social, on any of the platforms, through direct interaction, through customer service. That's the cycle that's going on. So they're responding with messages that aren't truly value-oriented. The people that have that information are deeper in the company. They're in customer service. They're in operations. They're in the delivery portion of your organization. They might even be in R&D and engineering. They have information that consumers will really value. And if you openly share that, then people will rally to your brand. That's the dynamic that has to happen to turn a company into what I call a big social mobile enterprise, truly integrated. And none of those experts can do that. They can't function as conduits. Only marketing can be a truly effective conduit. So start to think about how you can connect experts in the organization directly out to consumers, so that you're taking expert information deeper, stuff that you're helping to make consumers' lives better, and you're just handing it to them for free. And it seems to go counterintuitive to logic, but it's not really free, because you're getting a hard ROI on it from these social consumers. The old days, my generation, we would just take that information and use it in our daily lives. It wouldn't create any sort of relationship between the company and I. It was very need-based in my generation. But social consumers, which span many generations, I probably would be considered a social consumer in truth. But they give you loyalty, which drives customer lifetime value, which is the number one metric of success in business. So, again, it's a different logic in order to be successful today.
Do you find with this process, Dave, when you do work with a company, do you find during the process that there's a difficulty in like the mindset or the attitude of the people who are involved to change their thinking?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the truth for all of us in almost every aspect of our life, right? It's how do you accept your shortcomings? If you've built a whole company, if you're the rock star salesperson, if you've done one awesome marketing campaign after another, nobody wants to hear that thing that made you what you are isn't the way forward. Nobody wants to hear that they have to change their thinking, right? And so I can't be successful in getting a company to change when I go in and I challenge them head on. That's never been my approach. Probably when I was younger, back as an ops manager, I think I took a very head-on approach and tried to force people to do what I expected them to do. And in a union environment, maybe that mentality works for an ops guy. But if you're working with bigger, more sophisticated companies or smarter people, then I believe you follow a process. You set aside how they think, but certainly how they feel. And you show them the process. And if the process is good and sound and it gets them the tangible results that they need, if it gets more customers, more revenue, more profit, if it gets them those things, they'll get on board because they'll see that this makes my life easier. I can be more successful if I do this thing. They're not looking at through the lens of, oh my God, I've got to change, right? So if we want to turn a marketer into a conduit, what we do is I go out and I'll get information that's important to the expert in the organization or from the expert, and I will use that to directly interact with the consumers. I'll use that as an example. Like, let's say we want to figure out the next better version of a product. Well, the R&D person really wants that information. It's a gold mine for them, but they can't get it. They got to do surveys, all this other stuff. But a marketer, digital marketing, somebody with access to the community via social platform, they can just ask the question. They will get a laundry list of replies from their best, most enthusiastic community members. And the amazing thing is these people really understand. They understand the product. They understand the competitors. They know why they picked this product, what's good and bad about it, what they want to change. And they'll answer you, like even in narrative form, just in comments. You take that information back to that R&D person and say, well, look, I asked this question for you, and this is what they said. They will go, wow, this is awesome. Can you ask them this for me? Can they answer this question? And now you've created dialogue, and the light bulb went off for that expert. You're leveraging your community for a real result, and the marketer sees that, wow, I'm so much more valuable to this expert now. This expert's going to say good things. They're going to support my initiative in a way they would not have before. And by using that process, we've like sidestepped me saying, look, you've got to stop feeling all in charge of social. You're not really in charge of this. You're a conduit. I'm going to fail if I do that. So that's my approach to it. I think it's a little bit more successful than looking somebody in the eye and saying you have to change. People just, I'm probably the same. I probably don't want to change either if you ask people that know me.
Well, definitely, I think you have a point too, because I think marketers, like you said, they're not the best at sales and vice versa, and just really getting people to kind of change that mindset. There's got to be some challenges there. For people who are listening too, Dave, curious about the timeline. Usually companies that come in and implement this kind of change, what type of timeline do you see? Is there a standard timeline, or is it different for every company?
I think it's different for every company because they're going to be at a slightly different place. They're going to want to move at a different speed. Their basic propensity to change is probably different. But I don't think that I'm going in there or it's in the best interest of the company to change. And if I could wave a magic wand and give them a Harry Potter spell, I wouldn't change them overnight. I think that's a recipe for failure because this has to kind of seep into the company and become part of their DNA. They've got to become a data-driven, not just marketing organization, but they have to use that data and information all throughout the organizations to be what I call very integrated. So I'm really opposed to this change to a new form mentality. And in the book, I talk about example after example after example, big names, MySpace, Yahoo, many, many different companies that have all adopted that change mindset and failed. But If you look at the best companies, Google, Amazon, the big players today, what they're doing very successfully is evolving. They're looking at one thing and moving to their next better form.
Okay, great. And we're going to take a quick break. And after we come back from this message from our sponsors, Dave and I are going to we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about why mobile is so important. We'll be right back.
Let's face it, no one likes to be on the phone. However, it's the most crucial part of any sales-related position. But we here at Knockout Marketing enjoy being on the phone and getting to speak with various businesses all over the country. Technology has allowed us to acquire talent from other areas that feel the same way about being on the phone as we do, all to help your business succeed in the process. We have a combined experience of 15 years of successful telemarketing in the business-to-business arena. Our agents are articulate, business-minded, and have worked in various industries. We are standing by to help you with your needs. To see if our service is right for you, visit Appointment Setting by knockoutmarketing.com for a free consultation, or call us toll-free at 844-222-9740. You're listening to Strictly Marketing Talk Radio with your host, Carrie Heaps.
Welcome back to Strictly Marketing Talk Radio. I'm your host, Carrie Heaps, and I am talking with Dave Giannetto, the author of Big Social Mobile. And Dave, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We decided we're going to talk a little bit more this part of the segment about mobile. Why is mobile so important?
I think there's the big answer to that and the short answer. I always like to lay the foundation, before I jump into the examples that make it so real. I guess I'm trying to get everyone to understand that these are fundamental changes in how you have to operate. It's not just about building a mobile app. So social, it did something very damaging to companies. Prior to the arrival of social, just over 10 years ago, companies were really in charge of what I call the corporate consumer relationship. They had the upper hand, and they were really able to influence consumer opinion based on marketing, sales tactics, even branding. And most of the opinion of a consumer was shaped by the marketing and sales process. That was the intent of it. It was to manipulate consumer opinion to get them to buy more quickly, all these things that I call tangible benefits. All the tangible things we're after are all still the same. But social gave consumers an access to information that was totally separate from the company. So it really set companies back. Everything that they were doing to manipulate consumer opinion was no longer as effective, and it's been more and more eroded over the course of 10 years. And it took the consumer away from the company because the company couldn't really understand all of the things that the consumer was doing to make decisions in the buying process. They couldn't see them, understand them, and therefore they couldn't spin them around and use them against the consumer. It sounds underhanded when I say it that way, but go into any shopping mall that wasn't built in the last 2 or 3 years, and you're going to see the escalators pointing you deeper into the store every single time. That's the same thing. It's a very real-world example of how they're trying to force you to have a very controlled experience. So now we flash forward to mobile, and mobile is the first real vehicle that will give companies power back in this corporate consumer relationship, because a mobile device, and I don't need to tell you the statistics with mobile device and usage and growth and how engaged everyone is with their own smartphone and the anxiety they feel when it's out of reach. I mean, these are all very substantial, even emotional reactions to this mobile device. Mobile devices are constantly with the consumer, and they capture far more information than people understand. They're not just capturing usage information within an app. They are viewing the smartphone is actually a small little universe that you carry around. And in that universe are all the different apps that are on your phone. And remember, when you download apps and where those apps are located on which screens and how organized the screens are and the usage of subfolders, they see that whole universe and how things relate to each other. And what that does is allow them to build a profile of who you are and how you think and how you go through the world. And that's just what's happening in the phone, right? And don't forget, the phone is actually with you everywhere. The geospatial data is telling companies where exactly were they when they had this reaction, and what is that reaction when they change locations, when they see things around them. So now we've taken a consumer and we've completely datafied them. We can understand every single thing they did that was impacting them at the moment they took an action, right? Every time they interacted with us, there was a response. When do we get the response we want? Well, we get it when this combination of variables exist in this type of version, when these other variables exist in this other type of person. And what they're doing is they're mapping out which of those combinations is more perfect for them. Every time there's a perfect combination, they use it to their advantage. When there's not perfect situations, they try to mold that person to add in the right mixture of variables so it becomes a perfect moment in time so that they do something the company wants them to do. You can see that even the tone of how I talk about it, it shows that these good companies are back in control of consumers. And it's all because the mobile phone is telling companies far, far, far more than they ever think. Nobody has any idea just how much data is captured off of a smartphone. And sometimes I talk in programs as a consumer advocate, especially to like moms and stuff. I'll do interviews on on mom TV, and I'll be talking about, hey, don't tell your kids to download the free apps and games. Those are the ones that collect more data than other. It's free for a reason. And they're totally shocked, because they're telling their kids all the time, don't spend money on that phone. Don't spend money. Don't buy $1 application. I'm saying, no, buy it. Spend the $1. It's worth it because it's a more secure application. So people have a lot of misconceptions about what a phone really is today.
And I think too, like you said before, I think a lot of people don't even think about it. And I'll use myself as an example, Dave. I have a phone and I will tell people it's smarter than me. I mean, it's just, some of the things that, you have a GPS on your phone to get directions if you get lost. Even podcasting and radio programs now, you can just have the apps downloaded and streamlined on your phone so you can listen, whether it's, through iTunes or whatever. So there's so many different things that we can do. And I'm glad that you brought up about the safety issue, because that was going to be one of the things that I was going to ask about, even on the business side, doing certain things on your phone, knowing this.
It's funny to me because there's different types of people, or rather people have different reactions to this. Now I've been around technology all my life. Maybe it appealed to me at a very young age. I had a little VIC-20 that you hooked up to your black and white TV and you backed up onto a cassette recorder back in the day. So I've been around it a long time, and maybe I don't have the inherent fear of it that some folks might have. So I look at it totally different. I look at it like, the more they know about me, the more they're going to help me, and the more I can use that to my own advantage to get better offers. I know how I can build a profile that says I'm not an easy sale. I mean, in the real world, you know what? I'm an easy sale. Like I'm not price conscious because maybe I'm so busy, or maybe that's just an excuse. But I would rather pay a little bit more to make my life easy than I would hunt around for a price. So I know that that's my personality, but I try to leave a data trail that says that's not my personality, because then I'll get coupons and discounts in response. So I purposefully change my interaction with certain sites when I want to buy something. But I don't have an inherent fear, so if, like, even this morning, Facebook popped up and said, hey, we can log you into sites online automatically if you would like. We have this, they have a new interface that does that. So I said, sure, yeah, awesome. I know that this allows them to build a much more complete profile of who I am and where I go and what I do, but I don't care. Mm-hmm. And some people like, oh my God, they know all about me. They already know about you, and they're not doing anything nefarious. Mm-hmm. You just have to be very conscious of whether you're making a purchase for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And, I try to make a real world example. So if you get a refund on tax day, you have this tendency to go out and spend some of it. it just feels like found money. It's not. You earned it all year. They just holding on to it. You actually lost money, but now you got $1,000 in your hand. You're like, you know what? I'll stop and I'll buy that. Even if you buy that expensive cup of coffee that you never buy because you're price conscious, or you buy that CD you wanted, or the Xbox game you always wanted, or something, and you only spend a small portion. But in that moment, your propensity to buy is so much higher. Companies, that's the moment that companies are looking for. And a smartphone, a mobile device makes it so much easier. We can even detect the emotional state of a person and use that to increase positive brand association, positive sentiment to a brand by association. It's called associative marketing that we do now. So there's a lot more going on than people think. And what's coming is even scarier.
Yeah, there's a lot of different components to it. It's so fascinating. And Dave, what are some tips for, ROI on social and also on mobile that you can share?
Yeah, the one example that I love because, I speak and I write a lot, but when you're speaking in front of a live audience, you can see when the light bulb goes off. And when I do that, I try to use a lot of different examples over the course of time. So when I was writing Big Social Mobile, I'd be out there at audiences almost like working the material to see what was connecting and when I was putting it in a way that they understood and when they didn't. So one of the examples that always the light bulb goes off for people in a very, very simple way is when I was working on Big Social Mobile, I was talking to my dentist, of all people, and I said, I was telling her about the concept I've known her a long time. And so while my mouth is awkwardly open, I'm mumbling about this stupid book. And she says, really, will it help me? So we were talking. And one of the big problems for dentists is not only is it people don't like the dentist, or they don't like what the dentist does. So they don't really want to go back. There's nothing driving them there. And the other thing is when they need that cleaning, there's no trigger to get them to go back. So I think it's something like 40% of all Americans, that the stats are in the book, 40% of people walk around without the insurance supported or funded 2 cleanings per year, right? So next time you're in a conference, in a boardroom, look around and think 40% of these people don't even really get their teeth cleaned that often. But what we did with her is we put a very simple mobile add-on to her. She had a very small, QuickBooks-like program that was created for dentists. But it had this. Got this app plug-in, and all that it did is send out a very simple SMS message, and it said, "Your cleaning is coming due. Click this link to schedule online, or click here to call it." It had the phone number, and she said over 80% of the people push the phone call her office and schedule the appointment as soon as they get the text message, right? So we looked at the business model, and we said the biggest hindrance to driving more revenue for her is that people don't come in when they should come in. There's no trigger. So we used an SMS, which has excessively high open rates. It's almost impossible, emotionally impossible for somebody not to look at an SMS when it comes in. The response rate is very high. And so we use that very, very simple mechanism. No fancy app, none of this, no cool, buzzy stuff, no sexy pictures, to just say, look, your cleaning is due. Click here and schedule your appointment. And people respond over 80% of the time. Now look at that from a revenue standpoint. So all her patients get 2 cleanings. 40% of them don't come in for the second cleaning. She drove 80% of that 40% to do exactly what she wanted to do. And that's a drastic increase in revenue for a dentist that has 3 dentists in her practice in Bernardsville, New Jersey. That's a very tangible application of mobile technology that is a higher ROI than almost all of the apps that are created. And a percentage revenue growth, it's astronomical for a company her size to be able to do that. So it doesn't have to be huge and big and sexy and ranking high in iTunes. It's not about any of that. It's about looking at your business model, understanding the flaw, and saying, okay, how can social help me do better? How can mobile help me do better? And is there some data there that actually quantifies things, that will tell me factual information that I can act upon instead of just using what I inherently believe about my business. And that's flawed thinking to begin with. So, people always seem to get it when I use that example, because they're thinking of, oh my God, I got to build an app. No, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be about that. And I could just give you one example after another of the most successful companies. They start with their operational problem first, and then they say, how can mobile improve that? How can social improve that? Make that better. That's what makes Starbucks so amazing. They did the same exact thing with their Starbucks application, which is one of the most popular apps in the world, the number one wallet app in the world, but they did it for operational reasons, not for any other reason. So that's the right mentality for companies to have.
And I have to tell you, Dave, I have chills when you were giving me that example, because I actually had a conversation last night with someone who is going to the dentist today while I'm having my show. So that's really weird that you would bring that up. But that's a very high percentage, and I'm glad that you shared that. How do you think some other examples for small business owners to use, going back to your book, just using some of the content that's in the book, because you have so much great content in there. So what could they use that's in the book to help them increase their sales?
Well, I think Big Social Mobile, the things I write, even your column, I always feel this need to make it very actionable, to not just be fluffy, to create these vision type of books. If people follow me, they read what I write, it's because they know that I'm going to take this complex topic, and I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to give them a way that they can actually use it in their own situation in their company. So I felt an obligation to do that with Big Social Mobile as well. So it actually lists out the 5 steps that you can go through, and it breaks them down into sub-steps, and every sub-step has a set of questions that you can then ask within your own company. And it kind of leads you through this process, step by step by step, by telling you, do you understand this about your company? Okay, you do or don't. If you do, then you move on. If you don't, do you have this, this, and this? Put them together in this way, and it will build up to this information you need. So it's in some ways it's a workbook, and to me, it doesn't matter the size of the company. I mean, that dentist, my dentist, Dr. Amami, she's very small. There's only 3 dentists, in her practice, which is pretty good for a dentist, but it's not some massive, it's not Starbucks with their mobile app, which is all the same principles, just applied on a very, very broad scale. So small businesses, can follow the same process. The process is there to help them. I think the one thing that's different about a small business is that social has really hurt small business, in the same way that maybe Walmart hurts small business when they move into an area, because you can feel associated with a big impersonal brand in the same way that you can now feel really personally involved with your corner deli. So in the past, the corner deli relied upon that relationship because you walked past them every Saturday and Sunday morning or during the week when you went out for lunch. You knew them. Even if you never talked to them, you kind of felt like, hey, this is my town, it's my deli. But now you can know a big brand, just as easily if you're more of a social consumer. So that's really hurt local business. And I think that the response to that was small business tried to compete the same way that big companies are competing. They tried to have bigger messages, broader reach. They tried to deliver information that was related to the industry, right? And I mean, think of it. A small town deli wants to educate you on the quality of meats, right? I mean, come on. That's what a lot of social experts would say. They would say, give them information that gives them insight into the things that you know. Let them know you're an expert. Share that with. And I'm saying, no, you're a small company. You're localized. Play upon that. Talk about the things that show people that you're part of the community. Offer special things to the community. Work with the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the local high school. Tie into those things so that you're reinforcing what people already found valuable about you. And while you do that, yes, you put out what are the specials of the day every day. The same way they did it in fax machines in the old days, when you would get the fax in the morning on what's the soup of the day. It's the same thing. You're showing, you're reminding people why they liked you to begin with, what you bring to the community, and then you're tying to that the things that you want them to do. You want them to come in and buy that soup. And hey, that soup is handmade by the little old lady behind the counter, and it's got vegetables from Farmer Joe down the street, who you also know, and go to his farm stand. So think of how you reinforce what is already valuable about you, as opposed to trying to become something that you're not, because that'll lead to failure.
And I would definitely agree with that. And just kind of touching on that too, Dave, just as you were talking, because, for the smaller businesses, because a lot of them, they're also looking to get more reviews, positive reviews. And, obviously there's a lot going on too with reputation management. How do you see that factoring into big social mobile?
Well, I think you've got to acknowledge, if you're a company, that the number of reviews in and of itself is an important indicator today. So when you go on Amazon, you look up my book, you're going to look at the number of reviews. If it's got 5 reviews, you're going to say, okay. If it's got a bunch of reviews, and most of those reviews are good and they're insightful, they're meaningful, you can tell the person actually read the book, you're going to say, you know what, there's something here. Because, 30 people said, 40 people said there's something here. And that means of the thousands of people that read it, 40 is actually a pretty good response rate. So the number of reviews is something that you have to actively manage these days. It's unfortunate, but, people are busy. They don't take the time to do that. It's like on my Facebook author page, I posted an email I got from a company that I met out in California when I spoke there. And it was really great that the guy took the time to actually write me an email and say, thanks, this is how it helped my company, this is what I did. So you do have to actively manage your reviews. You have to be conscious of them, because when you get a bad review, you need to respond to it. That's of course the fear that most, especially executives, have. If I put myself out there and they say bad things, what do I do? But every study shows, and you could read the stats in the book, every study shows that you have an opportunity when you do something wrong that you don't have when you're doing right things day in and day out. When you do something wrong, it's an anomaly. It stands out in people's minds. It draws attention to it. So you not only increase the size of your audience, but you increase the engagement of the audience. Right? Just think of when you have a child gets lost, or some news event happens that has to do with a child. Everyone focuses on it. Suddenly the viewing community of the news increases because they're engaged in this hot topic of something that went wrong. The killer is caught, or those type of things. So when your company does something wrong, not only the size of your audience increases, but their engagement increases. And the response to that is, if you handle that moment of failure the right way, you're transparent about what happened, you're sincere in your apologies, and you show what you're going to do different in the future. That's all that you have to do. Those 3 things are all that you need to do. And once you express those honestly and openly, you need to show that you're changing direction. And that's where companies can get hung up. You've got to mean it when you say it. And that's the great thing, because I've written a lot about the good and the bad of capitalism. The bad of it is that there's very little social conscience sometimes. Mm. But social has really added that back in, because, the proof's in the pudding now, and everyone can see whether or not you mean it when you write it. And your action over the course of time will back it up, because those companies that do bad things and then they get called out on them, and they continue to do bad things, people just flock to it and start to hammer away, and it really kills that company. So I think it's good, because it makes social responsibility real at a company level. So
absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing that too. That's good. A good point of view. And Dave, we have your website listed on the show page, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling the listeners any announcements or appearances, updates you've got coming up that you'd like to let the listening audience know about.
Sure. Well, of course, I would love everyone to go out and grab the book. It's the easiest place to go is bigsocialmobile.com, Amazon, any of the book outlets have it. A bunch of events. You can always go over to bigsocialmobile.com to figure out where they are. It's a lot of people will find this funny, I think, but I'll be on the Jenny McCarthy show.
How exciting!
Right, the end of February. So some people scratch their heads and say, why in the world would this guy be sitting down with Jenny McCarthy? But it'll be a lot of fun for anyone who knows her and follows her or listens to her show on Sirius. She's a lot of fun, and her interests are quite broad. So I just want to throw that out there because I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun to do that. I think it's the 29th, perhaps, of February. So just check out Big Social Mobile and you'll be able to see the events.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we help you promote that. And I'll definitely be tuning in because I'm definitely a fan of her show, so I know that's going to be real interesting. And yes, and I wrote a book review on Amazon. I don't know if they've published it yet, but just a great book, and I can't say enough good things about it. And for everybody who's listening, definitely pick up a copy of the book. I think it's wonderful. But Dave, we're so glad that you were able to join us for the show today. You definitely provided some great, valuable content for everyone listening. And of course, they can read your column in the magazine as well. And we're just so ecstatic that you're on board with us this year.
Well, thank you for it. I hope they do tune in to read the column because, I try to do the same thing to help them, and your magazine's a great outlet for that. It's, people that read your magazine are in the know, and my message really works best with people who kind of already got it. They know that this is the right direction to go in, and they need that kind of guiding hand to get them there. And your audience is a knowledgeable group of people, and it's a great fit, so I appreciate it.
Wonderful. And again, we've been talking with Dave Giannetto, author of Big Social Mobile, and you can learn more about him. Just click on the link that's in the show notes. We're so glad you were able to tune in today, and we hope that you can tune in next week. We have a great segment lined up on cold calling. George Athen is going to be joining us. He is the CEO of Mindstorm and a top business growth expert who helps companies, business owners, and executives rapidly grow their organizations through 4 key performance areas of strategy, innovation, marketing, and sales. So we've got a great show lined up for you next week as well, and we hope that you will be able to tune in. And as always, we are wishing you continued success.